The women's suffrage movement began in the year 1848 and didn't end until 1917. The 19th Amendment had a great turning point in the United States. Before the turning point in the United States, women were not taken seriously. The U.S. did not allow women to participate in any political activities, wear certain clothing, or have the benefit to vice. However, after they had let women join in political activities, women began living liberated lives. Even though the 19th Amendment was the turning point in the United States, it still prevented discrimination of voting situated on sex, resulting in women from racial minorities remaining disenfranchised. The Seneca Falls was a transcript of proceeding which happened on July 19th and 20th of 1848. This is where women's right convention discussion was held, with the main question being based on social, civil, and religious condition of women. Then came the Civil War and slavery in the year 1850, which gave a thought of the women's right movement becoming pushed back. However, later came May 15, 1869, which was when NWSA was founded, constructing the first president of the organization being Susan B. Anthony. Following with the Declaration of Sentiments written by Elizabeth Cady Stanton, what she did was rewrite the Declaration of Independence so it could include women. She included these exact words, which were, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal," resulting to the U.S. government persecuting women by not allowing them to have the same rights as men. Then came 1909, when three of the action-changing women started trying to make a change. First, we have Marion Wallace Dunlop being the first woman to undergo a hunger strike. However, this resulted in her being arrested for creating damage on a wall located in St. Stephen's Hall in the Houses of Parliament. Then you have Emily Wilding Davison, who ran in front of the King's horse during a derby race, having her commit suicide to create public opinion of questioning the women's suffrage along with militant tactics engaging by the suffragettes. Following was Sylvia Pankhurst, who was the daughter of Emmeline Pankhurst, took a part in the movement by creating the East London Federation of Suffragettes and also inaugurated a newspaper called the Dreadnought.
The 19th Amendment of the U.S. and the Constitution gave women the right to vote in America. It was also rejected in 1878, then reintroduced every year for the next 41 years. It took activists and reformers nearly 100 years to win the right. In 1984, Mississippi officially ratified the 19th Amendment on the 22nd of March. 8 days before the 19th Amendment was ratified, over 10 million women had joined the electorate. They primarily didn't let women vote or be a part of any political parties because women's brains were inferior to men's. And so when women were incapable of participating in politics, it was so hard for women to fight for the right to vote, while some women liked staying at home and just cleaning, taking care of their children, and keeping their husband happy when they got home from work. The women that didn't want to vote said that they didn't have time to stay up to date on politics because they had no time to waste due to the fact that they had no more important things to worry about, just like their family. In the 1848, a group of activists, mostly women, but some men, gathered in Census Falls, New York, to discuss the problem of women's rights. They were invited there by the reformers Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucifer Mott. The reason that the men let women vote was because after the war, others hoped that because women had given to the war economics, they, along with slaves, would be guaranteed the right to vote because they needed the help of the women of the economy.
Continuing the movement from 1848 through 1920, it had first taken place in Seneca Falls, New York. A reason why women started this movement was because women had always been excluded from voting. Women from all around the world started this movement so they can have the ability to vote. From 1870 to 1900, there were 3 phases into this fight. The first of 3 phases in the women's suffrage movement in Oregon Falls included early action, organization, and attempts to achieve women's suffrage legislation. Utilizing the new Oregon system of initiative and referendum was a part of the second phase. Oregon suffragists participated in the national suffrage organizations and politics that resulted in the approval of the 19th Amendment during the last phase, which lasted from 1912 to 1920. The 1906 WSPU March on February 19 was the first ever march held in London to demand the right to vote for women in the United Kingdom. The Oregon Supreme Court had supported the right of tax-paying women towards the school suffrage in Harris v. Burr in 1898. In 1890, the NWSA and AWSA had been merged into the National American Women's Suffrage Association. This would later become the largest women's suffrage organization in the country that would later lead many to struggle for the vote through 1920 when the 19th Amendment was ratified. 1897 was the year of the foundation of the National Union of Women's Suffrage Society. Women started organizing nationwide suffrage campaigns in the middle of the 19th century, and local organizations would merge to become the National Union of Women's Suffrage Societies in 1897. The NUWSS, under Millicent Fawcett's direction, would later reach 50,000 members by 1913. The suffragists utilized nonviolent tactics like petitioning, lobbying, and marches. Jumping to 1872, Susan B. Anthony, an American women's rights activist, had spent more than over 50 years of her life fighting for the cause of women's suffrage. She was detained after charged with voting illegally, tried and found guilty after casting a ballot in her hometown of Rochester, New York during the 1872 presidential election. She later referred to her 2-day trial in June 1873 as the worst judicial outrage history has ever recorded. She was found guilty and was ordered to pay a $100 fine as well as court costs. There was a hearing following Anthony's arrest, which took place 2 weeks after the November 5th election to determine whether or not she had actually broken the law.
The women's suffrage movement in the United States gained prominence with the first women's rights convention in the world. The first meeting they had was held in Seneca Falls, New York. It took place on July 19th and July 20th of 1848. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, and Lucretia Mott were the first 3 women to put together the women's suffrage movement. The first women's suffrage convention produced a list of demands that they wanted from the Declaration of Settlements. Part of the attendees at the convention were abolitionists who wanted the right to vote for all adults. A little while later down the line, the 15th Amendment was passed, and it caused a schism within the women's suffrage movement. It had split the groups into 2 groups with each their own way on to achieve the right to vote. The reason why some of the group opposed the 15th Amendment is because it excluded women. Lots of the women marched down to Senate and House of Representatives and requested to add women to the 15th Amendment. Once the 15th Amendment was ratified, AERA, also known as American Education Research Association, could then push for another amendment for women's suffrage. On the other hand, important voices in the movement such as Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Lucretia Mott argued that any constitutional amendment that did not allow women to vote was unacceptable. Some states such as Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, Idaho, Washington, California, Oregon, Montana, Arizona, Kansas, Alaska, Illinois, North Dakota, Indiana, Nebraska, Michigan, Arkansas, New York, South Dakota, and Oklahoma allowed women to vote many years before the 19th Amendment was passed. More than 3,500 women ran for political offices a little more than 50 years before 1919, when the 19th Amendment was passed. And in Kansas, more than 750 women were elected for various political office positions.